should be recording. You should get a notification just warning you that the meeting is being recorded. And I will show you just a couple quick things before I introduce myself and all those kinds of things. Maybe I'll do that first, introduce myself. So I am Brian Riches. I am your professor for this course. This is Psych 111, which is lifespan development, and it's one of my favorite courses to teach. So I am excited that you are here. So hopefully you can see the slides. If you cannot, definitely let me know if I messed anything up. I used this all last semester, but sometimes I still make mistakes, especially when jumping through different meeting technologies like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and everything else. So a little bit about myself, and then we'll kind of run through what Microsoft Teams features exist. Hopefully everybody will be here by then. So again, I'm Professor Brian Riches. You can call me Professor Riches. I have a bachelor's in psychology as well as a master's in psychology, and I'm currently finishing up my PhD in positive developmental psychology. So that is what I'm doing this semester, teaching a couple classes and finishing my dissertation. So it's a busy time, but an exciting time. I'm doing a lot of things I enjoy because I really do enjoy teaching as well. So that's at Claremont Graduate University, which is actually in Southern California. And when it's a really cold morning like this, sometimes I wish I was there. But in the summer, I definitely prefer here, the hikes and things like that. So I do have a lot of research experience in psychology. I'm still working with a lab there at Claremont Graduate University. I am also doing my own research on heroism and pro-social behavior, and I'll bring that up a couple times throughout the course. I've got some teaching experience both here at Salt Lake Community College. I taught at Cal State Fullerton when I was there in California, and I've taught online, fully online, broadcast, in person, so all the different ways. So hopefully I will be able to bring in all those skills to this course. With that, if you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself, raise your hand. So if your camera is on, feel free just to raise your hand and I can see that. Or if you, I can show you this really quickly. So here's my window of, so some students are seeing themselves. Here's my window. If you come down here, you can actually raise your hand. So that's another way to raise your hand as well. So feel free to do that. All right, so I also have applied work experience in the field of psychology. So if you have questions about these kinds of things, so research, ABA therapy, these are things I've done before. So I did ABA therapy with clients that were in between the ages of 3 and 18. So I worked with the families, worked with their schools, worked with people in their community. So a lot of applied experience that way. I've also, for my research, been developing positive developmental interventions. And so you'll kind of see that come through as I talk about lifespan development, that I like to help young people build skills, build capacities, so that they can do well and do the things that they want to do, even with challenges that they might face in life or within their contexts and settings. With that, most of my research is focused between ages of about 12 and 30. So I do know more about development past 30, but that's where my main work has focused. So a lot of that is being pro-social, helping young people find their own purpose in life, things like that. That's what my work is focused on. So this is my family. I wanted to introduce them to you. So I also have a little bit of applied developmental experience of raising some kids. So Chloe and Malcolm, and then my wife Teresa there. So these are recent photos, and I kind of think my daughter looks a little bit like Wednesday Addams in these. She looks kind of creepy, like she's going to murder us or something, or pull a crazy prank, but they're pretty cute kids. So got that experience as well. So I just wanted to introduce myself to you that way. With this, already today, I probably used some terms or words, say, for example, context, that you've not heard before. So if I'm saying words that you don't understand, that you don't remember from the textbook, that you don't think you've encountered before, definitely raise your hand or make a comment like, hey, I don't know what that means. Can you repeat it? Because oftentimes I'll use the more professional or academic language just because I've been in the field for a while. So I kind of default to that. So if I do that, please let me know and I can help you understand, and I'll bring it back down to normal level rather than talking to grad students level. So, but welcome. I'm excited to have you here in this class. Before I show you a couple features of Microsoft Teams, are there any questions? All right, so those of you who have your cameras on, you'll probably see your faces recorded and projected back to you. So I know that's always strange for me, but I'm going to show basically my window, what I'm seeing right now on Microsoft Teams, and show a couple features. So if you hover down here, you should see a little menu bar. Here you can do things like turning your camera off, muting your microphone. Your default should probably be just to have your microphone muted. So as we're conversing, if your dog starts barking in the background or your child starts screaming in the background, other people won't hear that, as an example. For sharing, you probably won't need to do any sharing of your screen during the classroom, but I'll use that feature a lot. You can set which microphone you want to use with the More Actions button. And then this is really useful, the Raise Hand feature. So if you raise your hand, when I'm looking at participants, I will see those hands being raised, and then I can call on you. Also, if you have your video on, you can just simply raise your hand, and I should be able to see that. If there are a lot of people with their videos on, it doesn't always push them all to my screen at the same time. That's one weakness of Microsoft Teams. So it might be good both to raise your hand and click the button. To make comments or conversations, you can click this. And so oftentimes students will just have that open the entire time, the conversation. So here's where you can ask questions, and that pushes it to everybody in the class. Here you can see the participants. I generally have it on this page to show participants so I can see everybody in the class, if anybody's dropping out or having internet problems or raising their hand, things like that. Or I can also mute and unmute people if they've forgotten to mute themselves. So those are some of the features from Microsoft Teams, pretty similar to other screen sharing and video conferencing softwares. So some of the main ones, again, that you'll want to know are the conversation box as well as raising your hand. All right, so with that, are there any questions as we get started jumping into things like the syllabus? We will have some time in a little while to introduce ourselves to small groups. But first, let's get started with looking over the syllabus. Hopefully everybody has been able to access Canvas. Maybe I'll start with that. If you're here, you've probably been able to access Canvas, but if not, let's go there. Here's our classroom. I will go to Student View. Oh, there we go. So this is what your Canvas looks like. So you can see there's things to do that are listed on the right. So Chapter 1 Smart Book, 2, 3, and we'll talk about that in a second. So you should see here, these resources should be some of the first that you review. So the syllabus, the welcome page, the netiquette policy is essentially etiquette for online classes. So a lot of that's common sense stuff that I've just written down. The link to this classroom, so you might have used that, or your inbox, the email I sent to get here. This is resources for one of your assignments, and then Unit 1 is the first section of content we're covering in the class. So the Unit 1 lecture slides are what I am actually going through right now. So that's these. These are the Unit 1 lecture slides. The Chapter 1 Smart Book will link you to our classroom's textbook. So you don't have to buy any textbook. Your course fee has already paid for it. It's totally online. You can access it through any mobile device, essentially. So depending on your device, you might have to download something. I think if I got it on my phone, I would have to download an app. On the computer, it just opens in a website. So I will show you how to do that really quickly, because that's one of our first assignments, is this Smart Book. So the first time you'll have to log in with your email. It should let you sign in pretty quickly. So it'll look similar to this. I think it's actually taking me through the student method. Oh, because I'm not a student, it's mad at me. So I'll go back to my view. So this is similar to what it should look like. You should have a link to start the SmartBook. And then as you go to your SmartBook, you have either the option to start with your reading or you can start with your questions. Essentially, the SmartBook questions are kind of a chapter quiz that follows you along throughout the chapter. So let's start with reading to give you an idea. It will actually start you at the beginning of the content of the chapter, but if you click previous, you can go to the very beginning. You can see these are the topics for chapter 1, and this pages forward. And this goes to the next concept, essentially. So this jumps down to the next question that you'll be asked, essentially. So let's go to the top. Let's say today, for example, you wanted to get started reading chapter 1, and you had 30 minutes. So what you might want to do is read for 20 minutes. So in that 20 minutes, maybe I get all the way to here. So then at that point, I could then go to the questions. So with these questions, lifespan development, if I can spell. So you put in your answer, you put your surety of that answer. Most of these are actually multiple choice, so I want to show you that. So here's a multiple choice one. If you've read this content, you can answer the question. The assignment here doesn't care if you get it right or wrong. So your grade for this assignment is not based on whether you got all the questions right or all the questions wrong. It's based on completion. So you can see for chapter 1, there's about 19 questions. For chapter 2, there might be a few less. For chapter 3, there might be a few more. It just really depends on the software and which questions it's giving you. So as you go through the reading, you can do the questions in another way as well. So these yellow highlights kind of demonstrate to you where a question is. So I go here and I say, okay, I just learned about a little bit of these theories of development. Now I can come to my questions. So you can do it that way. You can also try a question and then say, okay, let's go to that section in the book in this read about concept. So, and that'll take you straight to the book section for that. So you can do that either way. Read through the whole chapter, read through part of the chapter, answer the questions up to what you know, or you can go question by question and read every piece as you answer those questions. The main point of that assignment is just to show me that you have completed the work. And so you'll see those as they're due. So chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 are unit 1, and then we'll have an exam over those 4 chapters, and that'll be a multiple choice exam. But let's jump to some other aspects of the syllabus. Questions at this point, though? All right. So I have 2 courses of lifespan development. So some of the times are different for the 409 class. This is the 403 class. So we are here in class from 8:30 to about 9:50. Some days will be a little earlier, just depending on how quickly we get through the content for that day. But generally, we'll spend about that same amount of time. For office hours for me, essentially just email me. We'll have office hours in this space, this Microsoft Teams area. So email me if you want extra help, if you have questions over something, if you want help studying or prepping for an exam. And then we can essentially just meet here in Microsoft Teams, and I'll have basically an office hours meeting room. Actually, that's one thing I didn't show you in the Teams. I can show you the different meeting rooms. So I'm bringing my Teams screen back over. So as you click on Teams, hopefully this doesn't kick you out. As you click on Teams, you should be able to see there are other classrooms. So these are for small group activities. So if your last name starts with A to E, you'd be in this room. If your last name starts with Q to Z, you'd be in this room. When you come for office hours, there will also be an office hours room that will appear there. So you would just click it, and that's essentially just a whole other meeting room, and we can do synchronous chatting just in the chat box. We can do video chatting, however it works best for you. All right, so it looks like pretty much everybody is here in class now. So welcome everybody. I know some people came in just a little bit late because it's the first day of school, figuring out technology, those kinds of things. So let's really dive into the syllabus now. Feel free to email me at this email or through the Canvas inbox. I'll show you the Canvas inbox. So if you click the left side here on a computer, or it's in different places on the app, you can email me straight through there. I generally see those emails first through Canvas. and I check these emails, but you can email either. So again, our textbook is online. You can buy a physical copy if you wanted, but since it's all entirely online, you've already paid the fee for that. You don't have to. So it's all completely accessible to you now as you page through the chapter. I think I left it open. You can basically page through the entire chapter using these buttons. So now I'm in chapter 2. If you want to go all the way forward to chapter 14, you can do that. So the entire book should be open to you right now. If you have any login trouble, let me know. First, try a couple of these resources. There's some McGraw Student Hill student tech support that might be able to help you. So some things that you need for this class are, one, a reliable internet connection. So if your home doesn't necessarily have one, maybe going to, say, a library or a coffee shop or to the campus might be an option for you. So I definitely want you to stay safe as well, though. With that, I definitely recommend, with us using Microsoft Teams, you use something with a larger screen. So a laptop, a larger tablet. You can definitely get Microsoft Teams on your phone, but it's a lot harder to interact when you're just using your phone. Again, if you do miss the meetings, our class meetings, which are Tuesday and Thursday, 8:30 to 9:50, you can watch the recording afterwards, but some of your points will come from activities that we do during class time. So you will miss out on those points for the activities that we do during class, and I'll show you those in a second. Well, those in your gradebook. You definitely also need a Office software. So all of you should have access to Microsoft Office online through your Microsoft email, your Office 365 email. One of the drop-down tabs, I think, I don't want to show my email, so didn't prep that, sorry. But there's a little drop-down menu that you can select, like Word or things like that. So you have access to that. Another option, if you don't have Word on your computer, is LibreOffice. It's actually what I use. It's a free open source Office suite. So, and it works on Mac, Linux, Windows. So that's a really good one. That's actually what I use all the time now. I'm not a big fan of Windows things, even though I'm using Microsoft Teams for this, for these classes. All right, so with that, let's scroll down. I definitely want you to read through all of this because a lot of these pieces in here will be useful for you for the rest of the course, but I don't think we have to go over them at the same time right now, especially because reading an entire syllabus is not the most exciting way to start a class. So, but it is important, so that's why we do it. All right, so Canvas, that is your course delivery system. That is the one that's linked through right here. This is Canvas. That's where you will turn in all your assignments. This is where recordings will be for the class. So after today's lecture, I will essentially make another menu here that is classroom recordings. So if you missed today, you're probably watching this on the recording right now. So that's where they will be, essentially right before Unit 1, and that's where I'll put them through the whole semester. Connect is McGraw-Hill, so it connects you to the textbook. The SmartBook assignments are essentially those chapter quizzes to show me that you're reading through the chapter. What I hope you do as you come to class, for today, I don't suspect that you've read the chapter at all. You just got access to the class, you might have clicked through. I know about half of you were going around through Canvas, trying different things. But for next class, hopefully you all come and you've read through all of chapter 1 or most of chapter 1, and you can come with questions from the chapter. So you've read through the chapter, you've taken notes on the chapter, you come to lecture, you learn a little more. Maybe you can add some more examples to your notes. You can ask questions that you were unclear on. And then after class, before the exam, hopefully at least one time, you re-review those notes. So essentially that will cover chapter 1 3 times. You've read it, you've had a lecture on it, you review your notes. So if you've done all those things for exam 1, you'll have everything from chapter 1 really solid. So Netiquette policy is here as well. I do want you to read that because I do expect it. One thing with that, I would prefer if you all do have access to a camera and a microphone. With that being said, you don't have to have your camera on all the time. I understand you might just not feel like having it on. You might not be able to. You might be juggling an infant or something at the same time and not want it to distract the class. So you don't have to have your camera and microphone on at all times during the lecture, but I do appreciate it. So when I can see students' faces, I can see that they're getting bored or confused or excited or interested in something, and it helps similar to a classroom setting, so I can focus on things better. But if you don't want to use your camera during the whole lecture, I understand that as well. The times when it will be required is when we break into those small groups. So when we break into those small group meetings, I do want you then to turn your camera on and your microphone on so you can have an easier discussion with other students. So I'm hearing a lot of notifications, but I don't think they're coming from this. It looks like I'm getting emails. Let me double check that there's not students who are needing to get into class. Looks like a couple students are having trouble, so I'll probably have a break in a little bit so that I can try to get those students in, and then we'll continue on. Let me show you a couple other key things in the syllabus. This is the grading scale. So as you get different percentages on things, you can keep track of your points and calculate your final grade yourself. So project your final grade. If you've gotten a 92 on exams 1, 2, and 3, then we come to the final exam. You can say, oh, well, about what do I need to make sure I keep that 92%? So you can calculate that yourself. I've got a couple important dates, like the last day to add classes, the last day to drop classes with a refund, and the last day to withdraw from class entirely with no refund. And then down here is one of the most important things, is our schedule for the class. So this is today, January 12th. Today we have our broadcast lecture, and it's synchronous. That means it's at the same time. So you're here, I'm here, we can talk back and forth. Thursday, we have another synchronous lecture, and then we will probably have a discussion or an activity on Thursday. So if we get to it quicker today, it might happen today. So these kind of let you know those are days you should be in class because we will probably have an activity, but it could happen the day before that in class or the day after, just depending on how quickly or slowly we get through different material. So it gives you an idea of when we will be having those point activities. So it's also got days when we're not having class. It tells you when the exams open. So exam 1 is, hopefully it doesn't make you nervous to see the first exam and its due dates already, but February 5th and 6th is when it'll be open. Those exams will all be completely online, so you'll access them through Canvas. I'll show you over here. So your Canvas in student view looks a little bit different than mine, but you'll essentially, unit exam 1 will appear at the end of this block of unit 1. You'll click on it and you'll do that exam. For this one, I believe you have 90 minutes. Yep, 90 minutes. There are about 70 questions, entirely multiple choice. So the question number might change a little in between now and then if I add or take away any as I review the exam. But it'll be entirely online. You can take it wherever you have good internet connection. It'll be open essentially 24 hours so that you can choose the time that works best for your own schedule, for your work, for things that you have planned. So you can take it right at 12:01 a.m. If you wanted to. Or you can take it, I recommend not taking it anywhere past, say, like 9 p.m. on the day it closes, just in case you have computer trouble and it like freezes and locks you out, and to make sure you have enough time to answer all the questions. All right, so that is our schedule. Definitely refer to that. It lets you know when things like papers are due. Most of the assignments that we have in this class are the SmartBook assignments, the exams, and the midterm and final paper. And we'll talk more about those final papers as we get closer to one being due. So SmartBook Chapter 1 is due just before midnight on Thursday. So hopefully by that time you'll have read through that entire chapter. Even if you haven't read the entire chapter by lecture time, that's okay. But hopefully after lecture you're able to finish that up and get that SmartBook quiz essentially completed. All right, the last thing here in the syllabus is a point tracker. So here you can see all of the assignments that we're going to be turning in. We've got exam 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 2 question papers. So these are your midterm and final paper. And again, we'll talk about them in more detail. It's essentially a 3-page research paper, and I'll explain to you in the future how to go about finding good research, how to write a good paper, those kinds of things. So don't worry about that too much right now. We have about half a semester to get to that first one. In the meantime, though, one big key of that is it's supposed to be a paper of interest to you. So it's pretty open on the topic. It just needs to be around psychology, and we've touched on it either in the textbook or lecture. So today I mentioned heroism. If you hear that and you think, oh, that sounds really interesting, I want to do a research paper on heroism, then that might be your question paper. You have some questions around heroism. Or I mentioned pro-social behavior. Today I'll mention epigenetics, things like that. So any topic that we cover essentially or touch on, you can write a paper on that for it. So think about it in that sense. What are you interested in the course that we're covering? All right, then Smart Books, that's your chapter practices. Each of them is worth 10 points. So if you miss one, let's say you just completely forgot, you were swamped with other classes, you were swamped with work, you weren't able to complete one, but you've completed all the other, your total grade for this would be like 160 out of 170. That's not going to drop your grade that dramatically. So if you miss one, that's okay. For most of these things, for the Smart Books, I don't let them be turned in late, but for the papers, they can be turned in late for a deduction of points, essentially 10% every day for a week. So if you turn it in a day late, your maximum possible points would be 90%. 2 days late, maximum possible would be 80%, and so on and so forth for a week. Then signature, assignment, and a reflection paper, that's kind of just, don't worry about that at all right now. It's kind of a thing we do for the university, and we'll talk about that very near the end of the class. So this is the total possible points. If we have different numbers of group activities, if we have different numbers of group activities, this point value might change. So right now I've planned 10 group activities during classes. But if we have 11 or if we have 9, that'll change this point value. So just be aware of that as well. And your Canvas does keep track of your grade book. So if you come over here, it might say grade book to you, I'm not sure. But if you click on your grades, it should keep track of your grades. Make sure that it is registering them correctly. So after you do an exam or a chapter quiz, go there, make sure it recorded correctly. If not, let me know as soon as possible so we can fix that. All right, let's go to those slides and see if I've forgotten anything. Oh, this is one thing I forgot. So if anyone has any special needs, if you've ever had a change to your class, like you were able to have more time on exams or something because of any kind of disability, let me know sooner rather than later. Definitely, I forget what Salt Lake Community College calls the office right now. I'll send an email about it to remind everybody, but definitely get with that office and get those things taken care of so I can know how to adjust the course to you, or if I need to add anything in addition to these lectures as well. So all right, I think that is all the boring syllabus stuff. It's important, but it can be boring. One other thing is some plagiarism resources. So this really only applies to, say, your papers. But one thing that students sometimes have a hard time doing is understanding what constitutes plagiarism. So obviously copying and pasting a whole piece of content and passing it off as your own, that's plagiarism. But as well, if you don't cite things correctly, so with in-text citations, with a reference list in the proper way, that can be plagiarism as well, even if it's unintentional. So this academic honesty section of the slides gives you a better rundown, more detailed rundown of academic honesty. And there's a couple little exercises or quizzes to test if one thing or another thing is or is not plagiarism. So kind of to quiz yourself to see if you're up on that. So we'll talk about how to do those question papers again later on in the class. For right now, I think we'll move on to the next bit of the class, and you'll introduce yourselves. With how few students are here right now in the classroom, I think we could actually do this together rather than in small groups. So let's go through. I think all of the names are alphabetical, so I will just go down the list of students. So please do for this have your camera as well as your microphone ready. If your microphone's not working or something like that, you can just use the chat box. What I'd like you to do is tell everybody your name, whichever of these colors is closest to your favorite color, answer that question, and then let everybody know which psych subject you are most interested in. So you can keep your microphones muted until it's your turn. But when it's your turn, turn on your camera, turn on your microphone, or use the chat box to do this. So I'll give an example really quick. My name, Professor Brian Riches. I'm going to say my favorite color is red. So if I could live anywhere, where would it be? I would really like to live in the Pacific Northwest. So Washington, Oregon, those would be great. On the side that's not all desert and dry. On the side where all the rain gets. That's where I would prefer to live. And what psych subject am I most interested in? Specifically within development, I'm interested in the development of prosocial behavior, how from a young age children can learn to do things like share and help other people, and then how that can continue into adulthood, how we can even encourage adults to be more prosocial and engaged in their communities. So that's my favorite subject. Yours doesn't have to be that detailed. If you have just a general idea of I'd like to learn about vision or babies or disorders, that's perfectly acceptable too. So let's go through really quick, and the first person will be Abigail. So go for it, please.
Okay, so hello, I am Abigail or Abby, either way. My favorite color is blue, so my favorite holiday is definitely Christmas, because who doesn't love Christmas? And a subject I'm most interested in learning is just brain development, because I love the brain and it's really just interesting in how it develops. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Abigail. Good to meet you and welcome to class. Brain development is in one of the first couple chapters, so it's one of my favorite areas too. If I had not gone into psychology, I probably would have gone into neurology with how interesting all that is. Maybe I will. Maybe eventually I'll do a second PhD in neurology. Actually, no, that sounds like a terrible idea. I'll learn about it through some research papers, but good topic. All right, let's jump to I might pronounce some of your names wrong as well, so I apologize. Please let me know how to pronounce them. So it's Anis, I believe, or Anis.
It's Anise. Hi, I'm Anise. My favorite color is yellow. My hero is my mom. Amazing woman. And I can't wait to study human development and then also brain development.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And for human development, is there any specific area of human development other than brain development? All right. Well, perfect. Good. Well, that's what pretty much this entire course is about development through the lifespan. So we'll be doing that. All right. Next, we'll go to Erica or Arika.
Hello, I'm Erica, and let's see, my favorite color is purple. My favorite band is Led Zeppelin, and I don't know if this will be covered in the course, but I think dreams and psychology is really interesting, how the subconscious uses dreams to convey information to our conscious mind.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I covered dreams more in the general psych class. So there's a whole basically section in that. So if you send me an email, I could send you maybe those sections of the textbook from general psych as well as the slides if you'd like, because we will touch on it, but not in as much detail as we go into for general psych classes. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to Brianne.
Hi. So my favorite color is red. So if I could live anywhere, it would probably be somewhere where there's ocean, because I've lived here in Utah my whole life and it's so dry, and I've been able to visit like Maui and um, like Florida, and I just like love how humid it is. So I don't have to put lotion on every time I get out of the shower. I'm just weird like that. But yeah, I'm interested in studying disorders and brain development.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I definitely understand that, wanting to be closer to the ocean and having a little bit higher humidity in a place, especially in the winter here in Utah. I generally forget to do the lotion after either washing my hands. You reminded me that I probably should do that right after class, or my knuckles might not be happy with me the rest of the day. But yeah, disorders is definitely something that we cover again in a lot more detail in the general psych class, but we will touch on it as we go through different lifespan points of what some common problems are at different times. So there's not going to be like a big chunk like these 2 or 3 days on disorders, but it's going to come up quite a few times throughout the class. So welcome. Let's jump to Brooke.
Hi, my name is Brooke Peterson. My favorite color is white, but my second favorite color is blue. And so my favorite holiday is hands down Thanksgiving. I absolutely love the food and love how there's no commitment to give presents. And this is actually my first ever psych class. So I'm just interested to learn everything.
Well, perfect. That's what I like to do in my psych classes, is kind of try to give students everything about psych. It's definitely not possible to give everything within just one semester, but I definitely try to pack in as much as I can about psych. So hopefully you find a couple topics that you find really, really interesting and you can dive into in more depth in your own question papers. But there's a lot that happens throughout the lifespan as we develop. And so I'm glad you're excited to learn about it, because I'm excited to teach you about it. All right, let's move to, I believe it's Daniela.
Yes, it's Daniela. My favorite color is red. So if I could live anywhere, it would be probably somewhere where there's beaches, maybe Hawaii, but right now it's too expensive. And my favorite psych is, well, I like the development, like how something that happens in your childhood can affect your whole life later on. So that's what I'm interested in.
Fantastic. Well, you picked a good course then. Since we're doing lifespan development, we'll start with prenatal development and move all the way through childhood, adolescence, adulthood, late adulthood. And so you'll see those patterns of things that happen early on, how they might affect things later on, and how there's a lot more change that can happen even in later life than we might have originally thought. Thought it was interesting that you were talking about maybe living in Hawaii, because I have a little Hawaiian Christmas tree over there, out of view of the camera, but my cat was just trying to eat it. So just ironic that you were talking about Hawaii while my cat was trying to eat a Hawaiian plant. All right, let's move on now to Elizabeth.
Okay, so as you said, my name is Elizabeth Betcher, and my favorite color is green. If I could live anywhere, I would probably live near the redwoods in California, because when I went, I was absolutely amazed by like how big the trees were and like the ocean and everything like that. Something that I'm interested in learning about in this class, I like to learn about like interactions and how, I guess how as we grow up, we interact with like different people or like different situations and how that affects us.
Perfect. We'll actually start talking about that in just a couple minutes after we do these introductions. So I'm glad you're here and interested in that, because that's a lot of what we do in a development class, is look at those interactions. So welcome. All right, let's move to Hannah.
Hi. For some reason my video is not working, so I can't turn it on. But also,
problem.
this is confusing, but I go by my middle name, which is Quinn. So I can see if I can reach out to IT and get it changed. But
Yeah,
so my name's
do that. Sorry to
Quinn.
interrupt. You
Oh,
can
no, you're
definitely
fine.
get your name changed so it displays differently for all of us
Cool.
as well as in Canvas. So
That's helpful.
definitely do that.
Cool, thank you. My favorite color is green, so my favorite movie I think is Harold and Maude. And then I've never taken a psych class, so I don't really know what to expect, but I do have a lot of interest in like gender identity stuff, which I think is in psychology and some overlaps. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Fantastic and welcome. Yeah, we will definitely be talking about gender identity and the development of gender identity pretty soon, actually, in the first couple chapters. And then we'll see how the context around people can affect gender identities and how it can be sometimes a risk or some things that can be protective factors for people with different gender identities through the lifespan. So great topic. And I will definitely, I've written down, basically, I've been writing down notes of things people are interested in so that I can focus on those as we come to them in the lecture. So I definitely wrote down Quinn is what you go by, correct?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, it is. Yep. Quinn is my middle name, so.
Perfect. All right, so I wrote that down. So I definitely hope I do not make that mistake again. So good to meet you. All right, let's move down to Marina.
Hi, my favorite color is purple. My favorite band is Fleetwood Mac, and I am interested in, I really love true crime, so I'm interested in mental illness.
Yeah, a lot of those shows really make an interesting display of certain mental illnesses. So we will definitely be talking about mental illnesses as we go through. There is a big focus on it in the general psych class if you wanted to take that one as well. Or again, like I've mentioned to other students, if you wanted those chapters from that textbook, I could, if you send me an email, I could send you that, and those chapters dive right into it. But in this class, we will get bits and pieces as we go along of different disorders and mental illnesses that are really relevant or kind of starting to show at different times in the lifespan. So great.
I'm actually in that class too, so that's good to hear.
Well, perfect. Perfect. So let's move on to Mario.
Hi everyone, my name is Mario, and my current favorite color is army green. The subject that I'm really interested in this class, I think, is going to be physical and cognitive development in early childhood. I think it's very interesting. My favorite band or musician, I don't really have one. I currently change every day. I've been listening to Russian rap, which I really recommend, and that's about it. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And do you speak Russian then?
No, I just like how it sounds.
I definitely get that. I sometimes listen to French rap, and I took French in high school, and I've tried to learn it on Duolingo more recently, but I still don't understand any of it. It goes too fast, but I do as well like how it sounds. So
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, we're definitely going to be focusing. Each of the chapters are kind of broken up into cognitive development at this age period, and then there's another section on socio-emotional development at this age period and physical development at this age period. So we're definitely going to be, cognitive development is one of my favorite aspects of that. Well, cognitive and socio-emotional, I enjoy myself more than the physical development aspects of it. So we will definitely focus a lot on cognitive and socio-emotional development in each of these stages of life. Great. So let's move to Michael. Looks like Michael is putting it in a comment. If anyone doesn't have their meeting chat open, open that and you'll be able to see Michael's comments. All right, yeah, neurology and the brain is one of Michael's interests, so thank you very much. We are definitely, it's one of my favorite topics as well, like I mentioned earlier, so we're definitely going to focus a lot on the brain and neurology. It has a lot of impact on a lot of other aspects of psychology and your development, so it's one of those things that's going to come up quite a few times. So thank you, Michael. Let's move to, I probably will pronounce this wrong, so I apologize, but Cybra.
Yeah, I was close. It's a Sabra. My favorite color is blue. My favorite holiday is Christmas. And psych subjects that I'm interested in is neurology and abnormal psychology.
Perfect. It sounds like a lot of students have that interest in both neurology as well as disorders. So we're definitely going to be covering that in a lot more detail in this class than I might in my other class that I'm teaching later today, since it's an interest of so many people here. So thank you very much. All right, now we have Shayla.
Hi, I'm Shayla. My favorite color is blue, and my favorite holiday is Christmas. This is my first psych class, so I don't really know much about it, but you're kind of talking about pro-social earlier, and I'm a really shy person, so I think that could kind of be cool to learn about.
Well, great. It's one of those topics that I often get on a tangent and go into, even if the content is not focused on that specifically. So you'll definitely get a lot of information on pro-social research and heroism throughout the course. So great. It's good to meet you. It looks like we had another student who was able just to add, maybe just right now, we're doing introductions. So I'm not sure if you heard our instructions. Essentially, name and based on these colors, answer one of these questions. Basically, which one is your favorite color? If your favorite color is green, you'd answer this. And then a topic that you'd be interested. So, and I apologize if I pronounce your name wrong, but I believe it's Yu. And feel free either to use the chat box or the microphone. Also possible this student did not has a bad connection, and so maybe that's why we're not seeing anything. So that's all right. We'll make sure that at this point there's only 30 minutes left of class, so rather than doing a break and trying to get those couple students in and everything working, I think I'll do that after class at this point. We just had these introductions. Oh, it looks like there is a comment here. Oh, Andrew, you joined a bit late as well. Go for it. Andrew, feel free to use your microphone and video, or you can use the chat box, either one.
I appreciate it, Brian, and yeah, glad to be here. I have 4 different Teams accounts, and I could not get Teams to disassociate from my government Teams account, so I apologize for being late. But I did catch some of the other introductions and happy to be here. Again, my name is Andrew. Favorite color is definitely green, being an Army boy myself. Favorite movie, tough choice, but I'd have to say The Princess Bride. It's one of my absolute favorites. And as far as subject most interested in, just as I think it was Shayla that just said, I don't really have a whole lot of experience in psychology, and I don't have a specific topic really in mind. I am going towards PA school, so medical route. So I'm looking to, really learn about helping people through their traumas and the psychology side of it. I've seen a lot of battlefield trauma and PTSD, stuff like that. And so kind of learning more about, how I can help treat the mind as well as the body.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, there's going to be a lot about those basics about memory and trauma and things like that in this class. So glad to have you here. And definitely let me know if you continue to have problems with Teams, not being able to disassociate. I know for myself, I sometimes have that problem too, where signing in from different Microsoft accounts can make it really upset. So definitely let me know. I wouldn't want to have all of your Microsoft Teams that you're using for work be ruined by this class. So in the future, we might even move to a different platform if it's totally messing up your sign-ins. So good to meet you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, well, I think that's everybody. Did I miss anyone else? Again, it's putting everybody's names alphabetically, so it's possible someone jumped in without me realizing it. All right, well, I'm really excited to hear all of your interests, and maybe they will even change as we go along. So the first thing for class, for the actual content, is extra credit is available. So if you add your picture to your Canvas profile, you'll get 5 extra credit points. You don't have to do it before the next class, but essentially before I put the grades in, which is usually around exam 1. So basically before exam 1, get a picture up on Canvas. That really helps me to start to get to know you. I'm seeing your names and your faces here on the screen. Hopefully I'll see them with the assignments that you're turning in the grade book. If you have trouble getting your picture to upload, I was just trying to upload a new picture yesterday and it wasn't working. So I'm going to have to contact IT and get that fixed. So after I do that problem, or after I solve that, if you have that same problem, I can let you know how to fix it. But for most students and most people, it just works. All right, so let's jump into the content. Yeah, so lifespan perspective. Let's get a couple big topics out of the way before we start diving into the main meat of the content for next time. Oh, looks like we've got some comments as well. Yeah, if you already have the picture up on your Canvas, essentially you already have those 5 extra credit points. So just leave that picture there and you'll get those points. So about half of the students, maybe a third of the students have a picture already. So if you already do, no need to change anything. All right, so our class is on lifespan development. So that's particularly interesting because it's over the entire lifespan. Development happens continuously from conception all the way to death. So there's change happening all throughout the lifespan. A lot of times we think about a child developing, and then once you get to be an adult, generally we, in just like layperson speak, we don't tend to think or talk about adults developing. But adults still do develop, still do change. You still have changes that happen after you turn 18, after you turn 25, after you turn 35, 45, 55, 65, all of them. So development is simply just that pattern of change or movement over time. So some of that change as you get into the very late years, so 85 plus, you might be losing some capacities. That's still development, that's still change. So that kind of loss is still called development, even though we tend to think of, like, when I say I'm developing my skills in French, generally I'm saying like that's growing. But when we're talking about development over the lifespan, some things are going to be growing, some capacities might be shrinking, and some might just be staying stable at that time. So it is over the entire span of life. So why would it be important or useful for you specifically to study development through the entire lifespan rather than just focusing on childhood or adolescence? So feel free to raise your hand on camera or use the raise hand button. And you can also raise your hand and then comment in the chat box. Go for it, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, so one thing I was just thinking about, again, with my kind of narrow perspective on, what I'm trying to achieve as far as being a medical provider. I've spent the last 5 years as a special operations medic in the Army, and boy, I've treated people from pediatrics to geriatrics and everything in between. And it's really interesting to work with such a diverse group of people, age and background, and understanding how to interact with each of them differently. You know, a pediatric patient is going to be shy, scared, maybe unsure, unfamiliar, whereas someone that's much older will be much more willing to accept your help and ask questions. And so just kind of, for me, understanding the patient population and how to interact with them.
Yeah, really great point. That these are people that you're going to be working with at all different ages. So it's really useful to know more about their background. You can interact with them better. Very good. There were some comments as well. So we have Daniela saying to understand people, because we're going through all phases of development in this class. So that will help us interact with people. You will, depending on what your career choices, we hear from you, Andrew, that you're working with all these ages. Someone else in class might only be working with people who are, let's say, 75 or older, or only with children. So knowing that background, we're interacting with people all the time. So understanding a little bit about how people interact with their settings around them can be really useful. So very good. And good use of also raising hands and using the chat box. So hopefully you're all starting to kind of get a sense of how we're going to use these tools throughout class. So another thing, we kind of touched on this already, is that development is lifelong. So while a lot of research at the beginning of psychology focused on development in childhood and then later in adolescence, that still might be your primary interest, is childhood development or adolescent development. But today we do know there's a lot of development that still is happening even through adulthood. So a lot of capacities, for example, that we thought were declining early on in adulthood, we've now realized through things like longitudinal studies. Longitudinal studies look at the same people over a long period of time. So looking at that, following those same groups of people over from the time they're, say, 35 all the way to 85, actually those studies went even till these people died. We've learned that a lot of the capacities we originally thought people lost fairly early on in adulthood are really not happening until about 85 or even 90. So you can keep a lot of your mental capacities, cognitive capacities all throughout your life. And there's different ways to even boost them at that point. So how might knowing more about adult and late adult development help or affect you? Go for it, Daniela.
With me, I think it's important because I'm a CNA, so I work a lot with elderly care. So for me to understand what they're being through and see like the phases, like when they're getting close to death and if they're declining, so I can keep the family updated. It's important. And also for myself, like to see what's coming next, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of us are probably adults in this class, right? And so whatever stage of adulthood we're in, my oldest student that I've had that I knew their age was 83 at any given time. So if anyone in here is over 83 and you want to let me know, you don't have to, but let me know. So with that, we'll all be going through these adult and late adult phases, especially if you're working with people who are at that end of their life. So chapter 17, well, 16 and 17 talk a lot about the end of life, the things that happen, the mourning process and grieving process for families. So those chapters might be really useful to you. We're definitely going to get to them in a couple weeks, but if you wanted to jump ahead, that might even be useful. So thank you very much. All right, so another aspect of development I want to emphasize, and you'll see this come up many, many times, is that development is multidimensional. So it's not really this kind of multidimensional, but it definitely gives me an excuse to put some fun comic book movie pictures on the slides. So in reality, what I'm talking about multidimensional is that your development is influenced by very many pieces, dimensions. So the biological components, the cognitive components, your socio-emotional components, these all affect your development. So if you look at this little model here, we have a child, and so they're made up of their health, the demands on them, their behavior, their temperament, their personality, cognition, biology, developmental level. So you might not know what all those terms are, but hopefully you know a couple. So you can see, oh, well, a person, any child or any teenager, any adult is made up of a lot of different pieces, a lot of different dimensions. So we as lifespan developmental scientists, we will look at maybe a couple of these dimensions and how they affect other dimensions, or how these couple dimensions change through time. So those are a lot of the studies that are done. So you can think of any person as me, of you, as a system of development. You are a multidimensional system that's changing through time. So your socio-emotional capacities today are probably not the same as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Some of you probably weren't even alive 20 years ago, since this is a freshman course, so some of you might even just be 17 or 18. So with that, your socio-emotional capacities will change maybe how you interact with people, your personality. So each of these pieces can influence each other piece. So that's what I mean by multidimensional, even though the pictures are pretty fun. So development is also multi-directional. At different points of your life, some capacities will be growing, just like in springtime. Actually, even right now, I'm noticing trees like starting to grow out buds or new bits of branches, so that in spring they'll be new leaves and things like that. So at different times of your life, different aspects of you will be growing. Different aspects will be just like in winter, going dormant or receding. So that's what we mean by multi-dimensional or multi-directional. So some things will grow and shrink at different times of your life. So the capacity to learn language is a really good example. So I mentioned earlier that I tried to learn French in high school, and then I've been trying recently as well. And I think it's safe to say I've been failing at it. If I was taking exams, I'd probably get the C's I got in high school on French as well. So with that, my capacity to learn language, all humans' capacity to learn language, is really, really high in early childhood. So, and as you get into middle childhood, and then capacity to learn language decreases. Oh no, it looks like my internet died. So my computer just gave me a warning that my internet died. Hopefully I'm still connected. Can anybody give me a thumbs up or just a comment to let me know?
Yeah, you're still going.
Perfect. Hopefully it didn't cut out for very long. Thank you, and sorry for the distraction. It's one of the weaknesses of this kind of medium. So with that, our capacity to learn language early in life is really, really high. As an example, and I'll probably bring up this example later on, I had a cognitive psych professor who had, they were from France actually. Their wife was from Ukraine. So she spoke both Russian and Ukrainian. He spoke French. Oh no, now it looks like I am kicked out of the meeting. So it looks like we've got a hand up. And I tried to call on you earlier, but I think that maybe your internet was having trouble. So I apologize if I get your name wrong, but I believe it's Yu. Go for it. Feel free to use your microphone or the chat box.
Oh, can I talk? Hello?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, no. I just wanted to give an example of myself on learning a new language. So I moved here with my 4-year-old son. So I didn't speak English. My son was not speaking English. But after 6 months, he was able to speak English and they start telling me everything like, Mom, you don't understand. They said this. So I was amazed to see how a little kid can learn quick. So I just wanted to share that.
That is a perfect example and fantastic English as well. So you said it's only been a year or a couple years now?
No, it's been 5 years, but at
Okay.
that time I was in my 20s and my son was 4. But he learned very quick and he started teaching me English home.
Fantastic. And while I've got you here, how do you pronounce your name so I don't make a mistake in the future again?
You.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and that's essentially this feature that you saw in your child is because our brains, essentially this is the left side of my head. Sorry if it's mirrored for you. The left side of your brain, right about here, is where we learn and process language. And so in children, there is a lot more neurons there and a lot more connections there to help enable them to learn language quickly early on in childhood. So if you had a 4-year-old and a 13-year-old, and then you probably wouldn't if you're in your early 20s, but let's say you took a 4-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 22-year-old, and all put them all at the same time into a new place with a new language, that 4-year-old would learn it really quickly. The 13-year-old would still struggle. They'd probably do a little bit better than the adult, but that 4-year-old or up to about 7 would learn a language very, very quickly. So as this example I was going to give is the father and mother of these children, they spoke multiple languages. So in their home, when the father was interacting with the children, he would speak only in French. So, and as far as I know, still does that to this day. Only speaks to his children in French when it's just him and his children. When his wife is alone with the children, she will speak to them exclusively. I think she speaks to them in Russian rather than Ukrainian, even though she speaks both. And then when they're together, so out in the community or just the two of them together at, say, dinner time, they'll speak in English. So from the time they were born, they were hearing these 3 languages, and they were trilingual by the time they were able to speak. So yeah, children have that capacity. 4-year-olds have that capacity to learn a language versus me, an adult. I'm failing at learning French, so I try though. So with that, development is relatively plastic. So this is another key thing that is not really a new finding, but something that's generally new for people to hear, is that plasticity means we have the capacity for change. So language, while it is harder for me to learn a new language because of my age and my neurology and brain structure, it still is possible. There are still things I could do, tricks, different techniques to use that I can change that. You can teach old dogs new tricks. Older adults can still learn a lot of new cognitive skills. So at the time that you get to about 25 or 30, most of your neurology, the building of your brain, the myelination, some of those words probably won't make sense to you yet, is done. And so at that point, you can gain basically any new cognitive ability, gain new memory skills, gain new problem solving skills all through adulthood. So almost everything can change to some degree at every stage of your life. Obviously, not everything can change dramatically. Some things can only change a little bit or be adjusted, but almost everything can change to some degree throughout your life. And so that's what's really exciting about lifespan development is, one, it's kind of a big job to look at lifespan development because there are so many different variables, so many different dimensions that can affect how people change. But it's also an exciting prospect to try and figure that out, be able to predict things, help people have optimal development, learn the things that they want to learn, accomplish the things they want. Development is also multidisciplinary. We've already today heard people who are in, say, the healthcare professions talking about how development is really important to them. And we're in a psych class, but what other disciplines or areas of learning look or are interested in human development? Yeah, we've got the comment of healthcare. Very good. So healthcare is definitely one of those areas that is interested in lifespan development. Any others? Any other fields that might look at development over the lifespan?
Any type of child care or like teaching?
Yeah, very good. Education, teaching, childcare. So you hit on quite a few right there. Very good. All right, any others that people can think of? Social work, very good. Yeah, so there's a lot of different areas. I've got a couple more listed here. So we've got psychology, sociology, social work, anthropology is one that wasn't mentioned yet. Medicine and healthcare was mentioned, neuroscience. So there are a lot of different fields and a lot of different people that are interested in development. So me as a developmental psychologist, some of my work is with people from these other fields. So they might have a specific question that's a little more focused on, say, the medicine side, but they might be asking me questions about the psychology side, or vice versa. I might need their help for something that's a little more psych focused, but touches on medicine or anthropology. One example is one person that also does work in heroism is Stephanie Preston, and her focus is in neurology and anthropology and evolution. So she talks about heroism from the angle of what kind of evolutionary capacities did mammals have to lead to pro-social behavior and even heroism. So this is one of her papers, Origins of Altruism in Offspring Care, talking specifically about how mammals' offsprings kind of, we evolved to have the capacity to care for our offspring, and that can kind of expand to other people, other animals, and how she talks about in this article that this might also be explain some of the capacity for humans as well. So those connections are things that she's an expert in, and I have some of the expertise in some of the psychology aspects. So where we can meet, we can connect these pieces, connect these disciplines, and understand even the bigger picture of, well, how did humans evolve the capacity for pro-social behavior, and how can we then use those evolved capacities to encourage pro-social behavior now? So definitely we as scientists work with other disciplines to further the field. So development is also contextual. So this is a term I've mentioned a couple times today. Context basically means setting, so the setting that you're in. So a child, we saw this kind of zoomed into this area earlier. So a child is made up of these different dimensions. They have their own biology, their own personality, their own health demands, things like that. But as well as that, they're in their own setting. So they might have a parent or parents, they might have friends, they might have a school network, they might have a social network. Their parents might be going to work, and that might somehow affect the child. They also have their own community that they're living in. Do they have a church? Do they have a preschool or out of school activities? What is the culture of the society that they live in? What about the time period? So these settings are the context. So context is basically like a quick word to describe all the different possible settings that could be around. So family, school, peer group, your church, your city, your neighborhood, these are all aspects of the context. So history and time can also be part of your context as well. So how have one or more contexts affected you in your development? Let's get a couple like concrete examples.
I have a personal so I grew up in Mexico, and we have like a different like culture than in the US. And when I came here like 4 years ago, I learned like another different culture, and I think that also helped in my development, understanding like different ways of living, and different systems, and I think that also helped me for my development.
Yeah, perfect example. So the culture, that makes a big change in a lot of these. So really good description, because when you move to a completely different culture, a lot of the people around you are probably very different, right? So you now had new peer networks. Your parents probably had different jobs, right? They aren't commuting the hundreds or even thousands of miles, right? So, I mean, I guess they could telework as well. But yeah, that's a really good example in that you change that culture, so it affects your development differently. So really good, really clear example. Anyone else have a clear example of how maybe even a smaller aspect of context change? So maybe moving from just one school to another, or something like that. So it looks like Abigail, go for it.
Okay, sorry, my camera isn't working, but
No
so
problem.
like I taught a lesson one time to some youth, and I had them all draw a picture of a castle. And as we like held up our pictures, they were all different. And I kind of like, these were just like people that were like around me that were like my friends and stuff. And we were like looking at our pictures that we drew, and they were all like very different. So I thought it was like kind of interesting that like just these people that were around me that I was with all the time, we all had like kind of a different vision of like what a castle would be in our minds. So I thought that that was kind of interesting just by like the people in my neighborhood and like church and like community all had like different contexts or like a different way they viewed something that was really simple.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have a big change, like a complete change in culture that will change a lot of aspects of these contexts. But even those little differences between you and maybe, let's say, friend 1 and 2. So those differences between you and friend 1 and 2, the experiences that they have had in their settings, in their context, their network, their family and their peers, and their own specific community and the people they've interacted with, even those little bits can change things pretty dramatically in a person's development. So they draw a castle differently. So obviously a whole culture change will change a lot of these things, but even these little aspects of, let's say even a parent's health changes, that might change your interactions with the parent and the parent's interactions with you. So let's say your parent has, I think these are some really good examples. So thank you. As we're looking at development through the lifespan, remember that we've got all these different forces and features affecting development at any given time. So, an example from Andrew is having a friend with spina bifida, and that they've had different experiences and different challenges and probably different supports throughout their life than Andrew has because of that context. So very good. So hopefully you keep that in mind as we go through. A lot of the book kind of focuses in on one subject at a time. But remember, this whole system is happening at all times. All right, so we are at the end of our time today. So we'll start off with here, and we'll have a class activity when we come back on Thursday. Thank you very much for being here. If you had any trouble connecting or anything like that, send me another email and let me know if there's anything that you couldn't hear or see or things like that, so we can get it all working for next time. But welcome to class, and I'm excited to have you.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.